I'll never forget the phone call. It was early morning, and the voice on the other end was shaking. "He's gone," they said. Just 2 words, but they hit me like a train. My best friend, Mark, had passed away in his sleep. He was only 56, not 86, not sick, not hospitalized, just gone. In one night, no warning, no second chance. And as I sat in stunned silence, I couldn't help but wonder how a man so full of life, so seemingly healthy, could be taken so early. It wasn't until later, after speaking with his doctor, his wife, and going through what he had ignored for years, that I realized the truth. He died because of 3 mistakes: silent, simple, and completely preventable. Mistakes that I now see everywhere in men and women over 50. Mistakes that you might be making too. In this video series, I want to share what I learned, not as a doctor or a health guru, but as a man who watched his best friend disappear because no one warned him. I'll break down each of the 3 deadly habits that crept up on Mark and how to reverse them before it's too late. The first mistake, the one that slowly chipped away at his heart, brain, and stamina, was ignoring stress. You see, Mark always said, "I'm fine." He had a stressful job, a mortgage, aging parents, and kids in college. But he never talked about how he felt. He brushed it off like most men do. "It's just part of life," he'd say. But inside, it was destroying him. Chronic stress triggers a cascade of problems in the body. It raises cortisol, which increases belly fat, blood sugar, and blood pressure. It weakens the immune system. It inflames the arteries. It disrupts sleep. And over time, it becomes like a slow-acting poison, one that wears down the heart, the brain, and the will to take care of yourself. In Mark's case, he had been having chest tightness for months, but he thought it was just tension or indigestion. His wife said he was working longer hours, skipping walks, and waking up groggy every day. But he never complained. He just kept pushing through. The night he died, he had told his daughter he felt weird, but didn't want to be a burden. That was the last thing he ever said. The autopsy showed he had severe arterial plaque buildup and had suffered a silent heart attack in his sleep. No dramatic collapse, no warning sign he couldn't have seen. It was his body saying, "I can't carry this anymore." Here's the lesson. Stress is not just a feeling. It's a physical force. And after age 50, if you don't learn to reduce it, whether through walking, prayer, deep breathing, journaling, or even therapy, it will take something from you. Your sleep, your joy, your health, or your life. Mark didn't just look tired in his final years. He was tired, all the time. But he never said the words out loud. He just slowly stopped doing things. He stopped going to the gym, stopped riding his bike. He even started skipping weekend coffee with me, the ritual we had since our 30s. I'd ask him what was up, and he'd always say, "Just busy, man." But what I later realized was happening inside his body had nothing to do with time and everything to do with a hormone most men over 50 quietly lose without knowing it: testosterone. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is about vanity or bodybuilders, hear me out. Testosterone is not just about muscles or sex drive. It affects your energy, metabolism, heart health, mood, mental clarity, and motivation. And as men age, levels decline, sometimes gradually, sometimes sharply. In Mark's case, it was the quiet killer that drained his spark. And the worst part? It could have been detected and corrected if anyone had checked. Low testosterone, or low T, causes symptoms that look a lot like depression or aging. Constant fatigue, weight gain, especially belly fat, low interest in activities, brain fog, poor sleep, and reduced stamina. For many men, it shows up as a slow erosion of vitality. You don't fall off a cliff, you just fade. That was Mark. He wasn't depressed, he wasn't lazy, he was hormonally imbalanced. And like most men, he never thought to ask his doctor about it. His wife told me that 6 months before he died, he had started snoring louder, struggling to stay awake in the afternoon, and had gained nearly 20 pounds. These are all classic signs of low testosterone. He also started turning down intimacy, not because he didn't love his wife, but because he felt disconnected from his own body. And that disconnection is what worries me most, for all men over 50. When you lose testosterone, you start to lose your identity as a man. You don't feel strong, decisive, or confident anymore. And most men suffer silently because society tells them to man up. Here's the good news. Testosterone can be tested with a simple blood test. And there are many ways to raise it naturally. Weight training, sleep, zinc, vitamin D, stress reduction, healthy fats, and if needed, hormone replacement therapy under medical supervision. Mark never got that chance, but you can. I now tell every man over 50, get your testosterone checked every year. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. And women, if you notice your partner withdrawing, gaining weight, or losing energy, gently ask them to consider it. You might be saving their life. Mark always joked about food. I eat like a teenager, he'd say, laughing as he tossed frozen pizza into the oven or opened another can of soda. He loved fast food, hated vegetables, and saw breakfast as optional. I used to tease him, "You're gonna turn into a French fry," and we'd laugh. But behind that humor was a serious problem. Mark was nutritionally starving in a world full of calories. This was the third and perhaps most obvious mistake he made. But it wasn't just about fast food. It was about decades of ignoring the signals, brushing off the warnings, and normalizing a lifestyle that slowly suffocates your arteries, clogs your brain, and weakens your immune system. When Mark died, his doctor told me his cholesterol was sky high, his blood pressure uncontrolled, and he had signs of insulin resistance. All preventable, all fixable, but never addressed. He was what they call a walking time bomb. But no one treated him like one because he looked fine on the outside. He wasn't obese. He wasn't bedridden. He was just making small, daily choices that added up. Skipping breakfast, grabbing takeout, snacking on chips, and drinking sugary drinks instead of water. And because he didn't feel sick, he assumed he was fine. But inside, inflammation was building. Arteries were hardening. His pancreas was working overtime to process the constant stream of carbs and sugar. And worst of all, his heart was quietly losing strength. This is the danger of diet denial. It's not what you feel in the moment. It's what accumulates in silence. One of the last conversations I had with Mark was about heartburn. He said he'd been popping antacids almost daily. That's a red flag right there. Frequent indigestion, bloating, or fatigue after eating can be signs of a poor diet and poor digestion. But again, he brushed it off, said it was just getting older. So here's what I've learned, and what I now teach every man and woman over 50. Your food is your fuel or your failure. You don't have to eat perfectly, but you have to eat purposefully. If Mark had just made 3 simple changes, cut out soda, added a real breakfast, and eaten a handful of vegetables daily, he might still be here. That's not speculation. That's science. Fiber lowers cholesterol. Greens reduce inflammation. Lean proteins help maintain muscle. Hydration improves circulation. It's not a diet. It's daily survival after 50. And you don't have to be perfect to improve. Just start small. A glass of water in the morning, an apple with peanut butter, a side of broccoli instead of fries. Tiny shifts, repeated daily, lead to massive results. Mark had a laugh that could shake the walls, a voice that filled a room. But in his last year, that voice got quieter. The laughter faded. He didn't come to poker night. He skipped our Sunday walks. And the hardest part? None of us really pushed him. We just assumed he was busy, or tired, or needed space. But what he really needed, what so many men over 50 need, was connection, and he didn't know how to ask for it. This is the fourth layer of his death, the emotional one. And though it didn't show up on the autopsy, I believe it played just as big a role as any artery or hormone. He was lonely. Loneliness is more dangerous than obesity, more damaging than smoking. It increases the risk of stroke, heart attack, depression, and cognitive decline. And the worst part? It often goes unnoticed, especially in men. We're taught to tough it out, to solve problems alone. Mark was the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back, but never ask for help. And slowly, that isolation drained his will to care for himself. He stopped going to church. He declined invitations. He barely called back. And when his wife asked him if he was okay, he'd shrug and say, "Just tired." But what he really meant was, "I feel invisible." After he died, I found an old notebook in his garage. Inside were scribbled goals: lose 15 pounds, take the RV out, fix the porch, start painting again. All things he never got to do, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't feel seen. He didn't feel supported, and he didn't know how to break the cycle of quiet disconnection. This is why emotional health is not optional after 50. It's life or death. Seniors who are socially isolated have a 50% higher risk of early death. But those who stay engaged through community, volunteering, hobbies, or even weekly calls live longer, happier, and healthier lives. I now tell every man I meet, don't isolate, don't go silent, reach out, schedule lunch, join something, text someone. And for the friends and family watching, don't wait for them to speak up. Ask, visit, invite, repeat. Mark didn't die because of one thing. He died from many small withdrawals of movement, nutrition, connection, and care. And each one mattered. Losing Mark broke something in me, but it also built something new, a fire, a commitment, a voice that now won't stay silent. Because if his story can save one life, your life, then maybe it wasn't in vain. In this final part, I want to show you how to reverse the mistakes that took my best friend too soon. Not with gimmicks or extremes, but with simple, powerful choices that add years to your life and life to your years. Let's recap the 3 silent mistakes that led to Mark's death. Unmanaged stress, the quiet killer that inflames, exhausts, and wears down the heart. Low testosterone and neglected health, the slow fade of energy, drive, and identity. Poor diet, not just junk food, but years of skipping the fuel the body needs. And the final invisible threat. 4. Loneliness, the emotional vacuum that leads to disconnection, depression, and neglect. These aren't just health problems. They're life patterns, and they can all be changed. So here's what I now call the Mark Protocol, a simple daily guide for anyone over 50 who wants to stay alive, sharp, and fulfilled. Move 20 minutes a day, even if it's just walking. Eat a real breakfast, protein, fiber, water. Get your blood work annually, testosterone, cholesterol, sugar, and inflammation markers. Schedule connection. Call a friend. Join a group. Say yes to lunch. Sleep 7 hours minimum. Your body heals when you rest. Talk about stress with a partner, friend, pastor, or therapist. You don't need perfection. You need progress. And the power of one good choice, repeated, becomes a habit, a lifestyle, a legacy. You owe it to yourself and to the people who love you to stay here as long as possible, healthy and whole. Don't wait for a wake-up call. Let Mark's story be your warning and your motivation. He didn't have to die at 56, and you don't have to die early either. Start today. Choose one thing from the list above and do it before the day ends. Then do it again tomorrow. And if you're watching this because someone sent it to you, it means they care. Take it seriously. And if you lost someone like I did, share their story. Make their life a lighthouse. Thank you for listening. Thank you for honoring Mark. And thank you for choosing life.